Well, welcome once again to Unstoppable Mindset. Here we are doing another episode, and that is always a lot of fun. You know, I've been doing this now since August of 2021, and I get to enjoy meeting a lot of people and talking about a lot of different subjects. And today, our guest, Shayne Halls, and I are going to talk about Manifested Dreams, which is a company that he started dealing with corporations, helping organizations grow, and using AI, which is, of course, not only a hot topic today, but a very relevant topic to talk about. I've been using AI ever since I actually got my first job working with the National Federation of the Blind and Ray Kurzweil, Dr. Kurzweil, who developed Omnifont optical character recognition software, which included the ability for the machine that he put that on to learn as it read and grow in confidence. And so this is not a new subject to me, and certainly one I support a lot, and looking forward to chatting about it. So Shayne, definitely welcome to Unstoppable Mindset, and glad you're here. And we really do have you and not just an AI construct, right?
Well, you wouldn't know if it was it? Because AI is that advanced now where you really don't know. No, it is me, flesh and bone
Well,
for the most part.
I remember back in, I think it was the 80s, maybe it goes back to the 70s, even with cassettes. There were commercials that said, "Is it live or is it Memorex?" Because the audio, they said, was so
good.
Yeah.
And now you listen back on it, like, yeah, I can hear the recording being done. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, well, I'm really glad that you're here, and we really appreciate your time. Tell us a little bit about the early Shayne growing up and some of that stuff to start the process.
Man, the early Shayne. So early Shayne grew up in the U.S. Virgin Islands in St. Croix. My mother is Crucian, person born in St. Croix. My dad is Trini, person born in Trinidad. So I'm half Crucian, half Trinidadian. Grew up St. Croix, moved to Charleston, South Carolina when my mother remarried. And that was quite an experience coming into Charleston.
How so?
Well, it was my first real experience with race in the sense of the constructs of what it is here in the States. Yeah. Because, of course, growing up in the island is 80%, 90% Black. And right. So everyone from your judges, politicians, police chiefs, store owners, homeless people, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, everyone you see looks like you. And then being moved into Charleston, I was like, oh, it's not like this everywhere, right?
So how old were you when you moved?
15, So entering high school, or about to enter my sophomore year into high school. So it was interesting, right? Coming into my first bouts with racism and being followed in stores, being looked down upon, being spoken to in a condescending manner, a manner in which you can feel what's being said without something being said, right? These are things I'd never experienced before. And I was jarred. I think jarred is a good word. Jarred by it. Was just like, oh, okay. So this is life outside the island, whatnot, So that was that. Left Charleston when I went to college. Came up to North Carolina to go to college at St. Augustine's University. It's a HBCU here in North Carolina. One of the first, founded in 1867. Was once regarded as the Harvard of the South. It was a great 4 years. Just loved my experience there, going to HBCU, being able to partake in that life and that culture.
Now, HBCU is
historically Black college and university.
Oh, okay, HBCU. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. And that was a good transition point before coming out into the real world. I got a chance to be surrounded by intellectuals and leaders of my same demographic background, and then have them prepare me to come into the world, the corporate world, and be the best version of myself out here in the world.
How did they help you prepare, given the fact that, so you were in a historically Black college, but at the same time, you needed to prepare to be in a world that wasn't necessarily totally historically Black by any standard. How did they help? What did they do?
The good and bad thing about HBCUs is that we don't get a lot of funding because a lot of schools are private, but that means that everyone there, the professors, the leaders in the school, are usually persons who are successful in their life and have decided to come back and devote time to the next generation. So a lot of leaders and professionals on HBCU campuses are persons who've already had success in the corporate world, had success in the career field, and they come back and they impute those lessons learned onto us. And they put us in situations to be, to hone in on our leadership skills. I can't countless leadership camps I went to. I was a member of the Model UN. While I was in school, Model UN is a program that's designed for selected college students to participate in United Nations type delegations and deliberations and any sort of acts or uh, constructs or contracts or anything that we actually propose and pass and ratify in the Model UN actually gets sent off to the real United Nations. And so participate in Model UN, which is great. Great experience. Again, so many leadership trainings and activities. You get a chance to go out into different conferences across the world and learn, and then come back home to your safe place and apply those lessons learned and hone in on what you should have learned. And then you can come out into the corporate world and be successful.
What kinds of things did you learn doing the Model UN program and so on? I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, and I absolutely believe it. I did not ever participate in that. Maybe it was too early. I don't know, but I appreciate what you're saying. But what kind of lessons did you learn, whether you recognized them right then or after you went back home?
Right, exactly, right. Or when later on in the corporate world, right? When you become an adult and you look back, you're like, oh, okay, so that's what that taught me. I think you learn how to get your idea across without being forceful about it, right? Because in situations where you have to be able to, you got to believe in what you're saying, especially United Nations, right? So you represent a country. The Model UN works where you are a country. No one knows you. No one knows your real name. No one knows what school you're from. As soon as you enter the Model UN, you're given a country. That is the country you are for the entire week that you're there. So any thoughts, any allyships, any sort of, anything you want to bring to the table must be done from the perspective of what's best for that country. And so when doing that, you learn how to think about how your idea can benefit you, but then also can be beneficial to others, and then how to convey that to persons in a manner in which they feel like they're actually going to be the ones who are going to be benefiting the most from the idea that you come up with or whatnot. So it's really great in learning how to work in groups and group activities and learning what your strengths are, because sometimes that people learn who that's not for them, like, being group leaders or participating in group activities like that may not be something that is applicable to their future. And it's not something they want to do, because it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of pacifying. Anyone who's done any sort of project in any sort of aspect of corporate life understands that there's going to be so many different attitudes and demeanors and agendas that you really have to pacify some folks. You have to kind of pull some folks along. You have to, hold some people's hand. It's just, you learn a lot of lessons on just how to be a people person, how to enhance those interpersonal skills that people talk about so much.
So is it one person per country?
Yeah. Unless you are, it literally is dependent upon your delegates in the UN. So whatever your delegate number is that you have in the UN is the delegate numbers that are available for that country in the Model UN.
So like the United States might have more than one delegate, or China or whatever.
Exactly.
So what year did this take place?
Man, when my Model UN, I was in school in, so I think I did Model UN in 02 and 03.
Okay. So a lot of events that happened and so on. What country were you?
Venezuela in one year. And I remember my country the other year. Yeah.
So did you strike any good oil deals?
I actually came up with a great, this was one of the lessons I learned, man. I came up with a great treaty, and I was working with the US, of course, as one of our allies. We worked together, came up with it. It's basically spearheaded by me, and kind of brought everybody along. And it was one of the best ones that uh, that week. And as you're going through your delegations and your debates and such, judges are moving about the room, listening to conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And the judges were there listening to us. And they came and were like, hey, was that you? Did you come up with that? And me still in this, like, delegate. I was like, no, it was a group effort between me and the United States or whatever. And then the United States got the award at the end of the week for most outstanding delegate. And that was one of the reasons why. And that bothered me to this day.
Yeah.
It should have been my, lessons learned.
Well, so yeah, things happen. What did you learn from that when that occurred?
That it's okay to speak up for yourself.
Okay.
It's okay to speak up for yourself. You can't expect someone else to toot your horn. You can't expect someone else to praise you. That you have to be comfortable with praising yourself and praising the work when you deserve it. When you do good work, when you have done something that's worthy of recognition and you have an opportunity to talk about yourself, and not in a braggadocious manner, but in a matter of fact manner, this is what happened, this is what occurred, do so. Don't wait for somebody else to do it.
There's a lot to be said for teamwork and giving team credit and so on. But at the same time, you're right. It's important that what you do gets acknowledged too, especially in the context of a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
most definitely. I mean, it's great, when you can talk about the team and give all the credit to the team. But if you hit the game winning shot, you're not going to be like, well, I didn't. It was Wilson. Wilson designed a great basketball, and basketball had a great bounce to it, and it just fit so well in my hand. No, you shot the ball. You shot the ball at winning. So take your credit when you've earned it.
Right, which makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you graduated. What was your degree in?
Political science with a double minor in English and religion.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so I love to write, and my mother was a pastor. And so church and religion was always a part of my life. And I wanted to kind of be more intellectual about religion. So minored in religion. English happened. English, I tell people this, these were my double minors when English turned out to be an accidental minor, where I just took so many English courses and AP and like advanced English classes that by the time I graduated, I had acquired enough credits for it to be a minor or whatnot. So it wasn't an unintentional minor.
Well, but it works.
Yeah, it works, right? I really enjoyed everything. Writing and wordplay is something that is very, soothing to me. And so never throughout my studies that I would think that I was like working. It was always fun for me. So did that with the full intention of becoming an attorney. And then my wife and I decided to get married my senior year of college and got married. And about a year later, we had our first kid. And so then it was like, okay, 4 years of law school, but I need to take care of my family. So started working and got into talent acquisition. I was recruited into recruiting and had no idea what recruitment was, what recruiting is, what talent acquisition was, and jumped into it. And it was a whirlwind, man. It was a whirlwind experience. And I started focusing in on DEI and wanting to be an advocate for persons who are looking to come into companies and then persons looking to grow in companies, and just made DEI the kind of the heartbeat of my talent acquisition work. No matter what I was doing, I wanted to make sure that there was always equity and there was equal representation for everyone across the board. And when we talk about diversity, I'm not just talking about skin color. We're talking about cultural backgrounds, educational backgrounds. We're talking about persons with disabilities, non-disabilities. Talking about gender background. Just we're talking about everything, man. Just diversity as a whole. The more diverse an organization is, the more successful they can be. So, that was an interesting journey because you meet leaders who are like, oh, well, everyone, look at my team. My team is so different. They have different races and women and men. I'm like, but you only recruit from the same college. Like there's everyone on your team went to the same exact school, has the same major. Like that's not diversity. You need to have different people on it, right? And so even some of the most well-intentioned persons accidentally show their bias, right? And so as my work grew in DEI, I started taking on more consultation work on helping organizations understand microaggressions, biases, how to build cultural teams, how to find out what your unintentional or your unconscious biases are, and so that's kind of all led me to opening up my own consultation firm, Manifested Dreams, in which we speak with organizations regarding their cultural issues and how to address them and how to have DEI trainings. And then we also do one-on-one consultation trainings with persons who are looking to grow their careers and need a little help in trying to integrate AI into it, right? And I think that AI is such a part of our lives now that trying to ignore it is going to turn you into the blockbuster in the world of Netflix. And you want to make sure that you are staying abreast as to how AI is impacting your particular field, your particular career, your particular journey, so that you don't get left behind and you're able to capitalize it and use it to be successful.
Yeah. And there is a lot to be said for those concepts. And it's interesting that you developed a deep interest in that. Why do you think that you were so attracted to developing that kind of an interest in really wanting to focus on this whole concept around diversity and even more important, I think, inclusion? Because one of the things that I tell people all the time is the difficulty with diversity is that it has left disabilities behind. When you ask people what diversity means, they'll talk about race, gender, and sexual orientation and so on, but they don't mention disabilities. And so that led us to inclusion. And that's why on this podcast, we talk about inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected where it meets. And the idea is that inclusion can't leave out disabilities. Either you are inclusive or you're not.
Exactly. What got me here? I think just myriad of events, just being in TA, hearing conversations, hearing leaders talk, being in the room, and understanding that people aren't aware, right? People in the room tend to look around and see themselves in the room so they feel comfortable. And it's never it's never something that they are aware of, that there's not others in the room, right? Because they just feel comfortable with everyone that's there. And
Yeah.
me always being one, talent acquisition is a field that is probably 70% female, one. And so being a male and then a male of color in this field, I am very rare in this field. I think in my lifetime, my 14-year career, I've maybe come across 10 other Black men who are in talent acquisition. And so being here, I'm always aware of who's not in the room. And then I make it my point as to not just talk about it, to always try to balance it and fix it somehow. Try to be a voice for those who aren't represented, and use my voice to try to help others get in the room as well.
For me personally, it's a strange world because having never seen color,
Mm-hmm.
it's always strange to me that people, intellectually I understand this, but that people tend to be prejudiced and biased based on the color of someone's skin.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that skin feels the same no matter what color you are. So I don't quite see the problem, but I do understand it intellectually. But for me, having never experienced it, I think I've been very fortunate. And the reality is I don't care.
Right.
But unfortunately, also too many people do. And that's something that we really need to figure out how we're going to address. And the problem is we've got too many people who refuse to, some of whom are supposedly very high up in, and I use the term in quotes, leadership positions.
Man.
And they still continue to be very prejudiced.
I think that's one of the biggest things I tell people all the time is that when I'm starting a training, I was like, look, if you look around the room, there's a couple people in here who don't want to be here. There's a couple people who don't want change. The idea that everyone wants everything to be happy-go-lucky, it is a false theory that you need to do away with. You have to understand that in every organization, there are leaders who like it exactly the way it is, right? They don't want to have to make accommodations for person with disabilities. They don't want to have to put Braille on the wall. They don't want to have to put ramps on. They don't want to have to put ramps all over the building. They think it's not aesthetically pleasing to their eyes or whatever. They don't want wider doorways. they don't want other diverse persons around the leadership table. Like, these people actually exist. And, if you want to be an ally for persons who aren't included, then you have to speak up when you have an opportunity for it.
We visited in San Francisco a building that Frank Lloyd Wright designed and built. It was fascinating because a lot of the building was a spiral ramp that took you from the bottom to the top or up to some level. It's been a long time since I've been there now, but the point is that he deliberately made it a ramp as opposed to stairs, and it was a very steep ramp. It would not be something that would be condoned by the Americans with Disabilities Act. But I was able to push my wife up the ramp and get her back down. She was in a chair her whole life. So it still was a building we were able to go into and actually be a part of. And that was really pretty cool. Yeah. And this idea of ramps not being pleasing to the eye is, I understand it. Again, I understand that people, again, are locked into, well, it's got to be stairs. Well, no, it doesn't.
It does not. I don't know who came up with that concept. I would love for slides to be a thing. Golly. Yeah. Can I have some slides somewhere? I'd like for just to be able to come down the slide. That'd be great.
Yeah, works for me. To keep in mind, though, you got to get back up. So what you do is you tip the slide and you go back the other way. That's all there is to it. But I mean, there have to be ways to do that. But it's just the whole concept that we don't like things different than what we want. We have learned not to go out of our comfort zone very well. And we really need to get over that. And that's what it really comes down to, is getting out of our comfort zone. And it's something that we really should do a whole lot more than we do. Well, I'm curious, you've been in this business now 14 years, talent acquisition. You've been dealing a lot with DEI and such. What would you say to your younger self just starting out that maybe they didn't know, or that you'd want them to know to maybe make their world, and as a result, the world of other people, better?
Man, I would think I would tell myself to just stand 10 toes down on who you are, right? I think that early in my career, I felt a need to quiet my voice in times where I should have spoken up. And it's left me with nothing but regret later on in life. Like, what if I'd spoken up on those situations, during those opportunities and whatnot? And so my younger self, I would help him get to the idea sooner of just being unapologetically you, and not quieting your voice to keep the status quo afloat.
I think that's interesting, being unapologetically you, but not arrogantly unapologetically you.
Right. Exactly.
Which is really the issue. And there's a lot to be said for that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're totally right. Yeah. Just be yourself, but don't be, arrogant about it. I think arrogance stems from this belief of you being able to do things that you have not done or attempted to do. Confidence comes from the knowledge of having done things similar in the past and conquered those things, right? And so there's a way to be confident without being arrogant. And so you should always be unapologetically confident in who you are as a person, but humble enough to know that there are things that you don't know, and there are lessons that you still got to learn in life.
And there's nothing wrong with exploring and learning and growing because of that.
I think that is one of the most great things that we have the ability to do in life, especially now more than ever. We have these phones, and I think we take them for granted because they've just been a phone to us, but they're literally a gateway to the world. And that is not any sort of exaggeration of the truth. There's nothing you cannot learn that you don't have access to in your hand every day. Another language, another culture, another background. You can learn anything you want. And the idea of being ignorant in today's society is a willful choice. If you don't know about a culture or a background, you don't know how somebody functions with a disability, you don't know what type of activities to plan for your company to include the person with disabilities, and you don't take a few minutes just to look it up on your phone, that's just willful ignorance at that point in time.
Yeah. And it is a choice. It's willful. It's a choice. And it is the kinds of things that lead to what we talked about before, which are the people who just decide that they don't want to have any change. They don't care about anyone else other than what is in their specific comfort zone, rather than recognizing the world's a whole lot broader place than that.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you feel that the school system teaching other languages as electives helps to contribute to that? Because you see in other countries where like learning another language like English or Spanish or whatnot is a requirement, right? And so a lot of people in other countries graduate high school already fluent in other languages. While here in America, Spanish is always just an elective, or French is an elective. Once you get into high school, you only got to take a couple courses of it and whatnot. I think that if we taught our kids more about other cultures and demanded they learn other languages along the way, it would help people in general understand that the world is bigger than your little pot. I've been studying Spanish for 4 years now. And the more I learn, you can't learn a language without learning the culture of the country in which it's from. And the more you learn about that language, the more you learn about those cultures, it just naturally broadens your horizon and whatnot.
Well, to answer your question, I absolutely believe that we could do more to give everyone in our society more of a cultural understanding of other people. And we really should do that. When I was in high school, I studied German for 3 years. And one of the things that we learned along the way was that in Germany, students in high school did take English as a course, and it was a requirement, and they had to study it and demonstrate their proficiency in it. I think that English was the choice, but there were other languages that they could take, but they absolutely had to learn a second language. And also, of course, they were encouraged to study more about the people than just the language, which a lot of people did because they had to practice it. When I was in college, I took a year of Japanese, which was a totally different concept.
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot of it, but if I hear somebody talking, I know they're speaking Japanese or not. And I've also been to Japan twice and had an opportunity, even before going, to learn a lot about the culture. And then, of course, learned a lot more about the culture being over there. And I think that we should do that. It gets back to the whole issue of banned books and everything else that we deal with today. People are so insistent on, we want it done just our way, and they don't even know what they're really asking for, which is so unfortunate. I continue to be amazed at some of the books that people want to ban in libraries. And then when you get to the point of saying, have you read it? Well, no, but somebody said that we should do that because it's racist. Well, but you don't know, do you? And I am a firm believer in knowing, not just listening to somebody and taking their opinion and just locking yourself into something because of it. We have to be the people who rule our own fate. And we should understand, not just listen to other people and then don't do anything about it other than, well, they said that should be banned, so that's what we should do.
I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think one cool thing about Japan that I always love is that they make their school kids clean up at the end of the school days. Like they spend like the last 15 or 20 minutes of school day cleaning the school. That is that is like a lesson that just sits in your soul. Like no one's going to come clean up behind the mess that you make. Like you got to clean up your own thing. You got to be responsible for yourself. I think that in itself, I love that about the Japanese culture. And then when you're talking about a person banning books, I've seen so many videos of people where they ask them, what is CRT? What does it stand for? Like, what does the lettering stand for that you're so passionately against? And no one even knows. Yeah. Like they couldn't even tell you. Like, how are you so angry about something that you don't even know what the acronyms stand for?
Of course, we all know the CRT stands for cathode ray tube, but that's another story.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
But you know, the whole concept of critical race and so on, I don't know that I totally understand the theory, although I believe I do, and certainly not opposed to it. But I'm amazed when I hear people talking about banning a book like To Kill a Mockingbird, which was recognized as such a powerful depiction of how Black people were treated, even back in the 50s and into the 60s and so on. And it wasn't racist at all. But I've heard people talk about how that has to be taken out of libraries because it's racist. And I actually heard a reporter ask someone who said that, "Have you ever read it?" Well, no. Well, then how do you know?
Exactly. I think that you know who I blame, Michael. I blame the participation trophy generation, right? Because there was this generation where we decided that everyone needed to feel good, everyone needed to be like okay, so we gave everyone participation trophies. And I think that is, if you ever listen to people talk about their opposing CRT, it is always, well, I don't want my kids to feel bad about what happened in the past. What?
Then teach them what happened.
Well, exactly. Like what? Like where you want to get rid of books because you don't want your kid to know that persons with similar cultural backgrounds as themselves perform some of the most heinous acts ever in history or whatnot. But what was interesting is that when it was just about teaching slavery and having little kids of color learned that their history was stemmed in being enslaved, that was fine for everyone. But when the history books started to talk more about the persons doing the enslaving and the heinousness of those acts, then it was like, well, we can't talk about this part. This part's not allowed to be talked about anymore. Let's change.
And the answer is sure you can. You can teach kids what happened, and then you have the discussions about how do we make sure that never happens again.
Come on now. It seems simple. I think we just solved it, but there's PTA meetings all across this country that obviously show that we're not thinking the way they do because they are staunchly against it and banning it left and right. I mean, states, governors, they are just on a roll lately, banning this stuff.
Yeah, that and all the other things that they're doing, the governors who decide to ship people who come in across the border who legally are allowed in, and then they ship them somewhere. When is that going to stop? When are we going to recognize that's intolerable treatment? And how could we ever elect someone who does that? And of course, there are going to be some people who will disagree with me, but the bottom line is you don't treat human beings that way.
My mind is blown at the idea that we have persons in power positions who are so arrogant to feel like someone doesn't belong in this country because they came across an imaginary line that doesn't exist anywhere except on your piece of paper, and that they don't have the right to be here. And then once they get here, we're going to treat them like pawns and move them about the country as if they're like games that you're playing on this big political chessboard or whatnot. It is the way we treat immigrants as if this country was not founded on immigrants is the most hypocritical thing I have seen in many years of my life. It is staunchly mind-blowing how we stand 10 toes down on the fact that we can't have immigrants now. Well, how do you think this country was founded? Because none of y'all were born here. Like, people came here. Like, you landed on Plymouth Rock. Like, that is the story we tell the children. Like, so immigration is how this country started. Let's not take away the opportunities that were given to our ancestors to somebody else's ancestors, right?
Right. Well, one of the things I think that you are doing in terms of now having found, when did you found Manifest a Dream, by the way?
This year, January of this year is when I made it official. New. I've been doing my own thing. I've been doing the work for probably 4 years now, but I made it official. I've been kind of just operating under a 1099 guideline for the last few years. And I was like, might as well incorporate and actually, do
make
something.
It into
make it real. Yeah.
Make it real. Yeah. Well, and I know that you, when we talked about it earlier, deal with using artificial intelligence as a significant part of that. So tell me a little bit about it. What is AI in terms of what you do?
And so AI, in terms of just what AI is in general, It's a great question because a lot of people don't even understand the idea of, I guess, what artificial intelligence really is. Anyway, so artificial intelligence is basically the idea that it was a field of computer science that kind of focused on just creating systems that are capable of performing repetitive tasks, right? Systems or tasks that don't require extreme amounts of human intelligence. And so we're talking about things from, basically anything under the administrative umbrella. Well, anyway, so AI has now been able, using machine learning, in which these systems recognize speech patterns, they recognize, patterns in the data that is being inputted into the systems, and they're able to perform, human-like tasks, these human-like repetitive tasks with a large bit of autonomy, right? Kind of like let it go and let it do its thing. And it's basically the driving force behind many of the digital tools and services that we use today and that we don't even know. Like Siri is a very basic AI. You ask it to do something and it does it. Like it, that you ask it to make a notation, you ask it to send an email, like that's AI. That is what artificial intelligence is on its most basic sense. Google itself is AI, right? Being able to go into Google, ask it a question, and it spits back out an answer. That is AI. We've all been using a version of machine learning or a version of artificial intelligence, but now it's basically like going through puberty, right? And it's become a lot more conscious and a lot more interactive. And it has a deeper understanding of sentiment and emotions and feelings and sarcasm. And so now machine learning and AI has elevated to another level. And with the growth of AI, it's now become so effective that you can have one person who is proficient with an AI that can do the job of 3 or 4 people, right? Because if you know the right prompts or questions or direction to give AI, you can have AI generate code for you. You can have AI, generate reports. You can have AI put together PowerPoints. AI can do so much if you know what you're doing. So companies are at this point to where they are hiring what's called prompt engineers. And these prompt engineers, one prompt engineer is replacing 3 or 4 people. And so what's happening with that is that diversity numbers are going to be impacted in every aspect because many administrative jobs are held by women. And so now we're going to eliminate many admin jobs. We're talking about your most basic entry level jobs on lines of like manufacturing lines are going to be completely automated at some point in time. So companies are going to be less diverse. And so I want to make sure that as companies start to integrate AI, they do so in a very meaningful manner, that they understand that they still need to care about what diversity looks like in their organizations, even though they may be now, upgrading or changing what that organization looks like.
Given what you just described, how do you deal with the people who say, well, AI is going to take away all of our jobs?
Well, I mean, it is going to take away a lot of the jobs. Saying there's not would be crazy. I mean, that I tell everyone, that's like when Blockbuster said, no, Netflix is going to go away. It's just a passing thing. It's not. It's here. Now, what you can do is learn AI and how to use AI in your job that you're doing, right? You don't want to be the person who put your head in the sand and you never took the time to understand what AI is and how you can use AI to make your job more proficient. You have access to a system that you can use that can basically eliminate any sort of repetitive task that you do in your day to day. And then you can spend the rest of your time doing and work on the more intellectual side of your job, the more creative side of your job. You can connect, you can use your free time, quote unquote, to better yourself in the company, to grow in the company, to be more impactful in your company, right? So yes, AI may replace jobs as we see it today, but that does not mean that you cannot use AI to elevate yourself to another job or to another place within the organization.
And the more AI and all of that entails comes into our lives, while it may replace or take away jobs in some senses, the other aspect of it is that there will always be more jobs that are being created. So it isn't like jobs are going to go away.
It's just going to be different.
They will be different. And that gets back to what we talked about before, which is there are a lot of people who don't like difference, but the reality is that's what it is. And so there will be differences, and we're going to have to recognize that and ought to recognize that and then use that to grow in everything that we do, which makes perfect sense to do.
Most definitely. Like 30 years ago, there was no IoT jobs, right? So Internet of Things is a job title in corporate America. No, that job didn't exist because the internet wasn't as proficient as it is now. But that is a very high paying job to this day. Like, it is very high paying. And so you just have to understand what's going on. You had a great place in this wave of AI. There's no college degree of AI prompt engineering right now, right? This is just like the beginning of the internet. Like, everything is just wide open. So you can literally get a system and learn it and perfect those skills and hone those skills. And yes, no one's going to be able to, you don't have to pay to learn right now. It is free. Get it, use it, and master it, right? Eventually, schools are going to start to regulate how you learn these things and how you master AI. And corporate America is going to get their hands on AI, and we're not going to have as easy access to it as we do now. In some fashion, it's going to be limited. How things tend to go in capitalistic societies. So while it's wide open, while anyone has access to it, while everyone has access to it, embrace it, learn it, learn how to integrate it into your daily life so you don't get passed over, so you don't, lose your job, but you can transition into a different job with AI.
Well, and as AI exists today, it's not yet grossly intelligent at truly being able to learn on its own. And that's one of the things that people have to be able to do, is to take the role of teaching it. And that's why things improve as people enhance AI and so on. And the time will come when even learning will be somewhat simulated or stimulated by the actual software. But even so, it still doesn't mean that that's the end of the road in terms of us. What it means is that we need to recognize that there are different things and different applications that we need to do. I think it's going to be a long time before the intelligence and the ability to have an intellect through a machine is going to grow to the point where it can do what the human brain does.
Right. Yeah. AI learns from us, our input into its systems. And it learns very quickly from what we put. It doesn't learn by itself, but it learns. Right. It doesn't take it long to learn. Once you start typing into your system, asking it questions, talking to it, it's learning every second. Every input you put into it, it's learning. But again, it's only learning because you're putting information into it.
Correct.
And I think that's one of the things that, as corporations are instituting AI into their workforces and their environments, that they have to make sure they have a set team there whose job is to monitor the inputs going into their AI systems, right? The algorithms that are being used, the searches that are being done, because the AI, while can be a great unbiased tool to use in performance evaluations, promotions, hiring, recruiting, it can also be taught bias. It can be taught to exclude persons because of someone else's preconceived notions or whatnot. So you got to have teams monitoring the AI that's being used so that it's not being used for nefarious activities.
Right. And the other side of it is because it has such rapid and full access to a lot of information, it by definition is going to teach us things as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's as it should be. As you know, and as people here know, I work for Accessibility, which is a company that makes products to help make the internet more inclusive for persons with disabilities. And Accessibility's main product that most people know about is an AI widget that sits up in the cloud, and it can look at anyone's website, and it can do a lot to remediate those websites. And people can learn about it by going to accessibe.com. But as enhancements are made to the widget, because somebody says, I tried to use it on this website, but this didn't happen, And what's the problem? If the people at Accessibility discover that you're right, it's an issue, it should work, they fix it, and then it rolls out to anyone who is using Accessibility, so that the new thing that the AI widget has been taught goes to everyone, and it will continue to grow, and it learns based on looking at all the websites that it deals with. And now there are well over 190,000 websites that use Accessibility, which is cool. But AI is going to continue to grow, and it will get better. There are things that on my website, Accessibility still can't totally do by itself, and there are reasons why. Like, it doesn't necessarily interpret pictures and describe them the way I want them described.
Oh, okay.
But I am amazed at how well it can look at a picture. Like, there's a picture of me holding or hugging a yellow Labrador retriever on my website. And the way I want that branded is it's Mike Hinkson hugging Roselle. Accessibility doesn't know Mike Hinkson. Accessibility doesn't know Roselle, because the restrictions under which you could go off and identify a picture are still in existence. So it can't, for example, just go to Facebook and realize that's Mike Hinkson and that's Roselle. So it can't do that. But what Accessibility does do when it sees that picture is it says, man in white dress shirt hugging yellow Labrador retriever. I'm amazed that it can do that, but it can. And then I can deal with that and put an alt tag, or my web guy can put an alt tag in. And so that's fine. But by the same token, it's amazing how far it has already come and how far it will continue to go. And that's the way it ought to be. If it makes our lives more efficient and we take advantage of it, why shouldn't we?
Why shouldn't we? I think it's fair that people don't. Like, we fear what we don't know, and I think a lot of people hear stories of AI. They see movies, they see Terminator, they see iRobot, they see all these movies and they're like, oh my gosh, AI is this evil thing. And yeah, it's not, it's here. We're in such infancy stages of AI that not taking advantage of this is doing yourself a disservice in some capacity.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Of course, you mentioned iRobot, and being a little bit prejudiced, I don't think the movie does the original book and stories by Isaac Asimov justice talking about AI. But there is a lot that we can learn, and we really need to broaden our horizons and recognize that this is a world where there are so many adventures. And you talked about the Internet of Things, you talked about the internet and so on. What a treasure trove. And you talked about the iPhone being a way that we can get to so many things. The internet in general is such a treasure trove of information. And yes, there's a dark side to it, which we don't need to deal with, and we ought to help not happen. But by the same token, there is so much more that the internet has available to us. It is just fascinating to go look at sites on the internet and learn things, which I get to do every day and have a lot of fun doing it.
What's crazy is that I remember being a kid and having the Encyclopedia Britannica and just having all these encyclopedias there to use. My mom would always tell me, go look it up. Always tell me, go look it up. You got encyclopedias, go look it up. My children have encyclopedias in their phones, on their tablets. Like, there's no more Encyclopedia Britannicas. Like, it doesn't even, like, I don't know anyone who still has like those kits that they used to sell on TV on the infomercials and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
The internet changes things. You have all this information that once was stockpiled into hundreds of books. It is at the tip of your fingers to find out anything you want to know. You literally can pop up any question in your mind and you can find the answer for it on some page somewhere. And
the comment, go look it up, however, is still valid.
Very valid.
And it absolutely makes sense to go look it up.
Except now the kids come back really quickly. What used to maybe take me, 20 minutes to look up an answer, my kids find in 2 minutes. They're like, all right, Dad, don't worry. I know. I'm like, great.
When I'm visiting relatives and all that, and we're talking about anything from sports to whatever, and there's a question, within just seconds, people have the answer. They have it a lot faster than I do because they're able to manipulate the phone a lot faster than I can. And so they get the information. But the fact is, it's there, which is so cool.
Yep, there's no more telling those stories. Oh, there was that game 2 years ago where NC State scored 90 points against this other. Like, no, let's look it up. NC State's never scored 90 points in any game anytime. Like,
And
like
it's history, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can't fight stories anymore. You can't exaggerate things. Yeah, and it's there to fact check everyone.
Yeah, which is okay. Again, that's dealing with arrogance and not. You don't want to beat people over the head with it when they're wrong. By the same token, you can still say, no, let's really go back and look at that and show what really happened, line. Which is so fun.
And sometimes you just sit back and let people tell their stories. You're like, you know what? Go ahead, Bob. You're not hurting nobody. Tell your story. Tell your story, my
Tell
guy.
your story your way.
Tell your story.
So I know that for me, using iPhones and so on and doing so much, it's still slower than other people, but I believe that AI is going to enhance my experience at doing a lot of the things that I want to do on an iPhone or whatever. Well, what do you see as ways that AI is going to help persons with disabilities?
I think that AI levels the playing field, right? AI is now able to take away many of the advantages that persons may have had in the past, and much easier now. AIs can be your ears if you are deaf. The AIs can be your eyes if you are blind. AI takes away the need to be in the office for those who may be, movement disabled, where they can't get to a location every day. You now have remote jobs where you can log in via remotely. So using AI in various aspects is allowing more inclusion into the workforce, right? So even when a person may not be able to go to an outing because of a disability, movement disability, they can use AI. They can use software like Zoom or software in which they can log in and interact and still be a part of the team, still kind of feel that level of belonging, as if they're there. With AI being as accessible as it is now in a place to where no one has to feel like they are at a severe disadvantage in trying to participate or be a part of everyone else because of their disability.
I would like to see AI and technology in general progress to allow me to be able to interact and look up information as fast as you can on your iPhone. And that doesn't exist yet. And that's a whole interface issue. The ideal way to do it is if my brain could talk directly to the phone, because you can type a whole lot faster by virtue of the fact that even with the gestures that Apple and the Android folks have put into the phone to allow me to interact with it, it's still going to be slower. And it's a little bit more, I don't want to say obtrusive, but it is a little bit more visible to the world. Because when I'm talking with people, they're looking stuff up on their phone while we're talking, and that's a little bit harder for me to do. It would be fun to be able to have that level of interface access, and I am sure it's coming.
I think that level of interface access is not as, again, as far away as we think. I think we're just like right around the corner, man. It's weird, but you've heard stories about people testing out brain implants now.
Yeah.
And so while that sounds scary, until you know that in the past people have had brain implants that help them hear now, right? Like these things are vastly open and very close. We're on the precipice of really having full AI interactions to where even when you've seen companies advertise or preview persons with movement disabilities getting AI limbs, and
Right.
the limbs are reading the nerves from the brain and are able to reflect the movement that the brain is triggering, right? Like these things are happening. We're like right there, and it's very cool. And so I think that it's not going to be very much longer where disabilities are more um, of a momentary discomfort rather than a lifetime
Yeah.
sentence, right? Because we've seen so many ocular transplants are happening now where people who are blind their entire lives are being given the ability to see again. Question: if somebody offered that to you, Michael, would you take it?
To actually gain eyesight, it'd be an adventure, and I have to think about it. It isn't the most crucial thing in my world.
Right, it
And
wouldn't. Yeah,
people who can see go, how could you not? Well,
I
how
never.
and why should I? That's not the issue. The issue is, will it really enhance my life if I could truly get that back? It's an adventure, and I would probably do it as an adventure, but not as a desperate need that
Right,
overwhelms everything. And I think that's the real issue. Um, with the whole issue of AI, we will continue to see growth. Ray Kurzweil says it's going to be 2045 when computers and brains basically are connected. And so we'll have direct access to all this computer stuff. And we'll see whether that happens in 22 years or not. He believes it will. That's the singularity. And I think time will tell. But we still have a ways to go to get to the point where we've developed that interface. One of the things about sighted people is you all have spent a lot of time developing technology to help you. Thomas Edison invented the electric light bulb, which really covers up your disability of not being able to see in the dark. And since 1879, people have spent a lot of time developing lighting technologies and stable lighting technologies that make it possible for you to pretty much cover up the disability of not being able to see in the dark until there's some major power failure. And then you nowadays can run off and try to find your phone and activate a flashlight or whatever, but it still doesn't mean that the disability isn't there. And we haven't progressed to the point of making that level of technological enhancement and advancement available to persons with disabilities. The priority is going to have to be to change that to truly create inclusion. And I think it will at some point, but it's still a ways off because it's still not really the priority. But the other side of it is a lot of the technology that would help us and enhance our lives could also be something that would help other people as well. I'm still amazed that while Apple built VoiceOver, the screen reader, into the iPhone, that Apple isn't doing more to promote it in things like driving cars. If you get a Tesla, you still have to look at the screen to do so much stuff. Now, of course, Elon Musk would say, yeah, but with the ability of the Tesla to cruise down the road, and yes, you have to be behind the wheel and so on, but you can afford that time to look away. Why should you have to? Why not be able to just consistently stay off of or stay on looking at the road and looking what's going on around you, and let a voice and vocal technologies help you more enhance your world? We haven't gotten to the point where we totally deal with that yet.
Yeah, I think that is a non-disabled problem of
It
not
is.
being able to understand how to use the technology we have to enhance the lives of those who are disabled. I think like people tend to pay attention to what is relevant to their life, and it takes special people
Yeah,
to think about how other people's lives are being impacted that has nothing to do with them at all.
that's right.
And the more special people there are in the world, the better we all will be. I think that's definitely a thing where persons with disabilities are going to have to be the ones to make sure that they are not overlooked, and those of persons without disabilities have to be allies to those who are, and use our voices to make sure that everyone's getting the equal amount of attention for uh, the things that they need to
Yeah.
enhance their lives.
Yeah. So what exactly does Manifested Dreams do?
Whatever's necessary to help you manifest your dreams, right? So if a company wants to be more inclusive, we can come in there and we perform cultural evaluations. We can help you put together various sort of cultural groups, employee resource groups. We can also sit down with persons who are on a one-on-one basis and help them understand their career and what they're doing and how to use AI to help their career grow.
How does AI factor into that?
AI can be used to make an admin assistant be super proficient in her job. And then she can also then use the other time to volunteer for other program projects that's going on at work and be proficient at that too by using integrating AI into the tasks that she's given. So he or she can grow and excel and be better in the organization. AI can help a leader understand where the gaps are within the company, who's not really promoting people properly, who has bias in their hiring. AI can be used for someone who is looking to grow as a writer. You can use AI to literally, proofread your stuff. If you're a writer, you use a certain AI program, let them proofread, let it give you suggestions on how to change the tone. AI can be used in many different capacities for whatever your aspect of work life is.
And so what I am assuming Manifested Dreams does is it comes in and you teach people how to use these tools and you get them hopefully comfortable using the tools, but you teach them how to use the tools and incorporate them into their processes to make the whole company much more effective and efficient. I'm presuming that that's essentially what you do, right?
Yep, that's exactly.
I think we lost you a little.
Yep, there we go. I'm sure what's going. Yeah, but that's exactly what I did.
Cool. Well, I'm with you, and I think it's cool that you're doing that. It's a great service. If people want to reach out to you and learn more about it and learn more about you and so on, how do they do that?
And you can reach me on, so email address would be my name, Shayne. So Shayne, DHSHAYNEDH at manifesteddreams.org. I'm on Twitter at MNIFSTD Dreams, so Manifested Dreams on Twitter. IG, Manifested Dream, Manifested _ Dreams, NC. We're everywhere. So please reach out, book us, let us come in, let us help you, and let's, show you how to really take things to the next level.
Well, that is cool. And I think you can help a lot of people realize that this whole concept of artificial intelligence and all the things that we're seeing being developed today can really be an enhancement if we allow that to happen, which is what it's really should be about, right?
Exactly. Don't be scared of it. Embrace it.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for being here. And I want to thank you for listening to us today. This has been a fun discussion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to our podcast, Unstoppable Mindset. Love it if you would do that. If you'd like to reach out and comment, I would appreciate that. You can reach me at Michael H.I., MICHAELHI, at Accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com. And as I said, go off to www.accessibe.com and learn about the products and learn how to maybe make your internet website more usable and inclusive. If you want to explore more podcast episodes, do that wherever you're listening to us, or go to www.michaelhingson, MICHAELHINGSON.com/podcast and check out all the podcasts. Of course, again, as you're listening, we certainly would appreciate a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to us. And Shayne, both for you and for all of you listening out there, if you have any thoughts of anyone else who ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, love to hear that. Please reach out to me. Please make introductions. We're always looking for more people to come on and have some more stimulating conversations. So again, Shayne, for you, thanks very much. We really appreciate you being here. This has been great, hasn't it?
It has. It's been wonderful. I appreciate the experience, and I look forward to talking to you again, my friend.